we are sometimes met with challenges. Persons do not properly declare, or they would say that, well, my family member packed such and such barrel with these goods, and when they question or they call their family members, they say, oh, well, we forgot to put this and such into the barrel. There are other times where persons claim that they put, let's say, a phone in their cargo. However, it was not declared. And when we challenge them again, they're like, because you cannot, if you do not claim for an item, it is considered a false declaration. So as we go forward and think, we are working not just with customs but with all our stakeholders to ensure that these incidents do not occur. At the moment, we have installed additional cameras. We have moved the examination area from where we had it initially to a more enclosed area, more controlled area. We have put up or put in some cameras. Also, the customs department, those officers are also wearing body cams. So when these allegations or claims come to us, we are better equipped to properly investigate these claims. But all in all, we are doing our best to minimize these claims. So,
what was the rationale for implementing a new system in the first place? So you had an old system and you now implemented a new system. What was the rationale for doing that?
Well,
and do people really understand the rationale for doing it? Was it explained in a very clear way to the public for the change? Because sometimes when people don't understand change, they question it.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I would say is you have mentioned it in your open dialogue, the pandemic. And with this pandemic, we have had to look at it or look at things differently. And it's a fluid situation. It keeps changing, and we have to change with the technology and the information that we have. Now, as I said in the beginning, to reduce the contact with the general public and to ensure the safety of our officers, because if one of our officers or a group of our officers contract the virus, basically the port will have to shut down. It will have to shut down. And quite basically, the port is there to facilitate trade. And if we have to shut down, no goods or passengers will be coming in and out of the Federation. So first and foremost, we have to protect not just our workers, but the Federation on a whole. Not just from the virus, but economically as well. So what I would say is we did go out and educate persons. I think that in these times, we have to continuously educate persons and keep them abreast of all the changes and all the challenges that we have. And that's why we're here with the theme, Overcoming Challenges.
It's really a matter of trust and people's trust in institutions, organizations, departments, and things like that. How do you build that trust with the public is important. Of course, you explained that the pandemic is the main reason for the change to the new system. And while you're protecting the public, it's ironic, on one hand, that you've made a change to protect the public and to protect the institution, and yet being accused of stealing. It's rather ironic, because what you have done is really to protect them. Yes, not in any way to disadvantage them in any way. Now, to feed on a strategic level, are there any plans to increase the space, the warehousing space at SCASPA?
Yes, we do have plans of tackling that issue. Currently, Customs and Ports have formulated a plan, which is currently being deliberated on. And as soon as we have the final go, jointly we will come to the public with the solution that we have in place to tackle those issues that we have, especially during the busy season. as it relates to the custody of cargo. So we do have a plan in place. It's just that at the moment I'm not at liberty to indicate what it is, but as soon as we have the go, publicly, Customs and Port will jointly make a statement to the public.
Mm-hmm. The last time I saw any ships in the harbor, they were there more or less for sort of a decoration purposes. They were there for safe harboring, you know, and then they left, and we really haven't seen any cruise ships coming. We're accustomed to see the cruise ships coming, mm-hmm. and then that again is because of the pandemic.
That's correct.
And all the buzz, the activity at Port Zante, we don't get that anymore because the cruise ships have not been coming. Now, when do we expect the first cruise ship to come to Port Zante? And because we've been having the Seabourn Odyssey, but it has been docking on the peninsula, somewhere across by Carambola over there. So when do we expect vessels to call, and what does the upcoming cruise season really look like?
Okay, thanks for that question, Leslie. We expect our first cruise vessel on the 14th. It's the Equinox. It all depends on how we perform when the Equinox come. All eyes are on us, not just regionally, but internationally. All the cruise, internationally, not just the cruise lines, but all our stakeholders. So it is contingent on how well we perform on the 14th. The vessel is coming with about 1,400 passengers. I don't want to say it's a mixture, but there will be some vaccinated and some unvaccinated passengers on board the cruise. I must mention that the unvaccinated passengers are children under the age of 12. Part of the requirements from us is that all passengers from 12 and above be fully vaccinated from approved, it must be approved. The crew, or 95% of the crew, should be vaccinated as well, but they're not allowed off of the vessel. They're leaving 5% of the crew to be not unvaccinated, but they will give them some time to get vaccinated, and they will be quarantined for at least 2 weeks, so that the vaccine can take course within their bodies. Now, when I say that it all depends on how we do, I mean this. The passengers, they will come and they will do what we call bubble tours. In addition to these bubble tours, they will be allowed to cruise or walk around Port Zante. Right? Port Zante will be made into a sterile or a bubble area. It will be fenced off to ensure that both passengers and store owners alike, or the persons who ply their trade, to ensure that they do what they are expected. They will have compliance officers. There will be a police present as well. Now, for persons to ply their trade, they would have to have attended a travel-approved training conducted by the Tourism Authority. If these persons have not attended this training, they will not be allowed to ply or operate their trade. Right? In addition to that, on this day, while the ship is in from between 7 to 5, only fully vaccinated persons will be allowed within this bubble. That includes the passengers, local persons coming in to do whatever businesses upon Port Zante, because as you know, they are outside of the stores. There are also public offices such as the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and so forth that is there. But those persons, they must be fully vaccinated to come within this bubble. Also, not just passengers, but also the staff you would find within SCASPA, from the security officers to our pilots, to our berthing officers, to our linesmen, to our custodial staff, because I'm just trying to say this too so I can give the listening and the, well, let's say the general public, to give them a sense or idea of all the resources that comes into play here. Now, outside of SCASPA, there's also the taxi operators, there's also the tourism officers that are there to assist the passengers as they come from, well, as they disembark the vessel. So I must stress that only fully vaccinated persons will be allowed within this bubble between 7 to 5. And again, all future calls are contingent on how well we perform on this day. There is a scheduled date. The next scheduled call is on the October 5th, and we have other berthing requests or calls, but again, it is contingent on how well we are or how well we do on this specific day, how well we comply to both international and local protocols.
So all service providers,
yes,
operating within the bubble must be fully vaccinated.
Yes, sir.
And must have undergone the training by the St. Kitts Tourism Authority so that they are certified to work within the bubble. Never thought we'd be hearing a lot about these bubbles.
Well, just to add too, because I want to go in just a little context as it relates to the bubble tours, because the passengers will leave from the vessel, go straight onto a travel-approved taxi operator, and they will be carried to these different sites and so forth. And again, all these sites, their staff, off-site and on-site at Port Zante, will be or are fully vaccinated as well. So what you would have is they would go to these sites, do whatever tour they have to do, and then they will be brought back. So it's not like back in the day when it was just business as usual. Persons go, and then let's say when they reach to a specific site, they can hire, let's say, Mr. Cannoneer and have them to pick them up to go, let's say, to the beach and so forth. That is not going to happen now, because, as I said, we have to be careful of what we do in terms of ensuring that we get future calls. So I must stress that it is contingent on what we do on the 14th.
So this is just this is the trial and error.
Yes.
Really, basically.
Yes.
Okay. I'm a part of the task force, so I am aware of some of the issues, because I do know that SCASPA is represented on the National COVID-19 Task Force, because at this time, of course, it's an all of government and all of society approach really to getting this thing right, you know. So it would be happy to see the cruise ships again, but we are seeing them, and then we are going to have tourists, but it is the new norm in which we now live. So there is really no contact much with the general public and so on because of the COVID-19 virus. Now, when do we expect a full resumption? I know we speak about a reopening, but that full resumption is contingent upon how we perform on the 14th.
But if we were to estimate based on what is happening out there internationally with CDC, the home ports in Florida, etc., we can probably look at full resumption sometime in the 2023-2024 season. Yes.
So it's really going to take a while.
It's going to take a while, because it's not just based on what happens in St. Kitts, but it's really what happens within the industry, and in particular the home ports and the other ports on itinerary. We have to have some similarities in terms of the protocols at the different ports so that an itinerary can work. So there are a lot of things in play, and it's really contingent on those things.
Mm-hmm. The public health related issues.
That's correct, yes.
It's contingent on those.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now, the second cruise pair was built some time ago. And there has been a lot of chatter surrounding the second cruise pier. Some people saying it was not built properly and that it cannot be used for the purpose for where it was built. Remember, the whole idea was that we can have 2 more Oasis class ships, those very, very big ships, to dock there. And some people are saying that things went awry. and the port can't accommodate these ships and so on. What can you tell us? What's the latest with respect to that?
All right, so let me tackle the pier first. The second cruise pier has been completed. It has been completed in February, but we have essentially taken over the pier since December when we had vessels berthing there. The completion, we say completed in February because the contractor had some additional dredging which needed to be done, and that has been done. So essentially Pier 2 is ready, and it's available for vessels to berth for the upcoming season, and even as early as next month if necessary. But we do not have an influx of cruise vessels, so we'll be using the first cruise pier. So the pier is ready. The pier though came with an arbitration matter, as you know. The contractor would have taken SCASPO to arbitration over unpaid claims in the amount of about $15.2 million US dollars. That is equivalent to 41 million EC dollars, quite a big sum. Of that 15.2 million US dollars, 1.5 of it really relates to amongst that is related to the contract itself. So essentially the claim is in the region of about 13.7 million. So the contractor has indicated to SCASPO, hey, we have additional expenses on that $43 million pier in the amount of $13 million, $13.7 million. And SCASPO has rejected that. And with that rejection, we were taken to arbitration. It started in 2019 from June, and the claims keep on adding until the arbitration hearing took place in December, and in February it was held virtually. And we got back the award in June of 2020. And I must say that SCASPO and St. Kitts and Nevis was successful in that arbitration. The tribunal ruled that the claims, most of them, were null and void, in other words. What they've awarded, well, let me just highlight some of the claims that they had. They had claims for stevedoring, for additional dredge work, for additional piling, for changing costs. They've indicated that during the process costs increased. They had claims for exceptional adverse weather conditions, for utilities, etc. So our engineer would have reviewed those claims and would have advised SCASPO that based on the contract that we have, which was a fixed price contract, that those claims should not be honored. And so we agreed and we went to arbitration. Now the tribunal ruled that SCASPO is only liable to pay $294,000 in losses arising from adverse weather conditions. And of course, the $1.5 million that I spoke about initially, which related to the contract itself, that amount had to be paid. So out of the $15 million, SCASPO simply had to pay $294,000. Now, on top of that, because the pier was completed later than expected, it was supposed to be completed in September, we took it over in December. The tribunal awarded damages, delayed damages to SCASPO, and so the contractor has to pay to SCASPO $624,000 US dollars. So basically that is where we are in terms of the arbitration. All in all, we were successful with the arbitration. The 15 million, the 41 million EC dollars would have been a significant burden for SCASPO, the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, if it had gone another way, and thankfully it went SCASPO's way, and St. Kitts Way, and we're very happy for that. Now, at the moment, we do have some remedial works to be done. The tribunal has ruled that whatever defects were identified during the defects liability period, which was December 19th, 2019, when we took it over, to December 2020, anything that was reported to the contractor during that period must be remedied by the contractor. And of course, we have a few dredging, a little bit of dredging to do still, and some minor cracks and so on the pier. Trivial repairs to be done, which would not affect the operation at all. It would not affect vessel berthing there. It would not in any way impact the operation. So as it stands, Casper is capable of accommodating all the classes of vessels. We did ask the contractor to dredge down to 37 feet. In some areas, they did 36 feet. While the Oasis class can berth safely at that level, SCASPA has to look out for its interests and potential liabilities. And should we have a drop in the levels, the ocean's level, it means, in our view, we do not have enough clearance. So the dredge that we're going to commission to do remedial dredge work at the commercial dock at Pier 1, we're going to use it as well to just do some remedial work on Pier 2. And when that is done, we would have on every pier the capability of berthing an Oasis class vessel. So on Pier 1, we're going to dredge the east side so that it can also accommodate Oasis class vessel. So at the end, we're going to have 2 piers that can accommodate Oasis class vessels on any side. So basically that's where we are, and we're making plans to get that done as we speak.
Okay, tourism looked very, very bright up until last year. We had been having record-breaking tourist arrivals, and that prompted, of course, because of the success that we were having in tourism, prompted the building of the second cruise pier. And the pandemic came. And right now, additional work is going to be needed to resuscitate the tourism industry. We had come so far and were doing so well, but now it's almost as though we have to rebuild it because of what has happened. And that is the fragility of the tourism industry. And Joseph, and that is the whole thing. In this time that we are right now, everything is sort of a fluid. And, you know, cruise, airlines, you know, everything is very fluid in this environment. And how will this continue to impact SCASPA's operations? You mentioned that SCASPA had lost so much money. You know, it's operating at a loss. Staff had to take a salary cut and all of that because you depend on the arrivals. You depend on the cruise ships coming and the airplanes coming and so on. And when that is not happening, you have a sort of a seesaw kind of a thing going on. How is SCASPA prepared to deal with that impact? Joseph.
Again, at this moment, because the situation is so fluid, the best that we can do is prepare and position ourselves so when the situation changes, we're not left or caught with our pants down, quite basically. Because if we remain stagnant and not do anything to prepare ourselves, because the situation will not remain this way for too long. But we will have to, and as I have mentioned, as Tafida has mentioned, we are doing or preparing ourselves and preparing our staff and doing the necessary things to our infrastructure to ensure that when cruise resumes, when the borders are open, that we are prepared for that.
said, yes, we have to start almost from scratch, and we are doing that. We are working very closely with the St. Kitts Tourism Authority, with our minister, Minister Grant, and also with the Tourism Ministry to engage the cruise lines. We have been doing that repeatedly. They've gotten very integral in terms of the second cruise pier. They've reviewed the bathymetry, et cetera, and given the approval. So we are working very closely with them. We know that in going forward, we may have to make some concessions. I mean, we have increased our cruise passenger fees from $5 to $10, and that is something that has been communicated to the cruise line sometime in the past. And on the airport side, the Tourism Authority has been working with the airlines to get them to come back. We've had the American Airlines is coming back, and there has been an uptick in the frequency of flight. In fact, in October, we expect to see them coming daily. We have British American, supposed to start in October, Air Canada in December, and of course, Delta has started operations as well. Now, before the pandemic, we were in discussion with Caribbean Airlines, and they did confirm calls. In fact, they've rented space at the airport, etc. And then COVID came, Trinidad borders closed down, and then we had to put a halt to that. So we have been in communication with them in recent times, and they're working out their schedules at the moment. We're hoping that come 2022, we're going to have Caribbean Airlines coming here to St. Kitts. So we are working assiduously with our partners and engaging the airlines, engaging the cruise lines, etc. On the cargo end, our cargo lines have not really been impacted. It's just that the quantity of cargo has reduced significantly. Last year, 2019, 2020, it was down 60%. Now we're at about 40%. And it just goes to show the impact of the pandemic and how when the tourism sector is impacted, when hotels are not open, restaurants and so on not open, the impact it has on the cargo that are imported, and it impacts Casper. So we are trying our best with the resources that we have to ready ourselves for the resumption of all our activities near to 2019 levels.
Of course, air travel resumed before cruise travel, and we can understand why. Because if people are on a ship for 7 days with air travel, you are not in a space for such a long time. And so therefore the dangers on cruise travel in terms of the spreading of the virus, the cruise ships can really be incubators for the COVID-19, and so that is why I think it took a longer time for them to resume, and they have to have more safety measures in place and all of that. Right. So we expect, you said, Tofida, we expect British Airways to be back from the UK in October. We expect American.
Yes, to increase its flights in October to daily, and Air Canada. Air
Canada as well.
Yeah, in November.
What about Delta?
Delta has started operating already.
Okay, and United?
Not as yet.
Not as yet, but they hope to as well.
As well, yes.
Okay, so the air traffic is going to increase. Okay. Now, the airport, recently I heard a lot of noise about, at the airport and people being so uncomfortable that it was, the heat and, and things like that. It was all on the news and, the talk shows. We have a lot of talk shows. People like to talk. And something appears to be wrong with the central air conditioning system. What is Casper doing to address this?
Lesroy, you're slaughtering me now. The central air conditioning system is a fairly old system. Over 20 years, we have from time to time changed out the chiller part of the system, but a recent assessment revealed that the chiller itself, the compressors and condensers and so on, they're bad. The salty air has been impacting it, and the air handlers, which has been there from inception, are not operating at capacity, very, very low, and some are not working. So we've had to do some interim fix. In the meantime, we've repositioned a condenser from the Welcome Center to the departure lounge to keep that area cool. We're in the process of replacing some of the air filters. But what we do know is that we are going to replace the system. We already have the quotes, and we're about to make a purchase of just about $1 million to procure and install a brand new central air conditioning system, one that is resistant to the impact of the salty air. So we are looking at it. We understand the implications of not having a proper working air conditioning. We know the hit SCASPA got and the government got for the air conditioning. We take full responsibility for that, but we're trying our best to get it right. And as I said before, we have put some measures in place to keep it running until we have it installed. It is expected that in the next 8 to 10 weeks, we should have a brand new AC system. So we are working assiduously towards getting that done, and we want to apologize to the traveling public for what has happened. But our maintenance team, they're trying their level best to work with a very old system.
Now, the pandemic has slowed up a lot the movement of goods and people and skills and trade, because our borders are so necessary to that. So regional movement, global movement have been slowed down, and trade is extremely important. I remember when the pandemic just started here in the Federation, I think sometime last year on February, March.
March, yeah.
People had a lot of concerns in terms of whether food were going to be coming. You remember that?
Yes, yes.
And that is about food security. Mm-hmm. And that is how important it is that our borders remain open, mm-hmm. and that because then, of course, you know, the movement of goods, food security, and all of that. People would line up in very long, you know, long lines, go to the supermarket, and they will buy up all this toilet paper. I wanted to know what was it about all this toilet paper, but they buy up a lot of toilet paper and a lot of stuff because they felt that, look, I want to buy enough for 6 months, just in case food wouldn't come and so on. So the borders are extremely important to facilitate the trade in goods and services and all of that sort of a thing. Now, what plans does SCASPA have to facilitate trade? Because we are not just trading. What other plans during this COVID-19 environment?
Leslie, I think I touched on some of it prior. We spoke about port management system that we're going to implement, and a community system that's going to expedite how we go about approving vessels and processing cargo. We would be making use of the technology to limit the time persons have to spend moving from agency to agency to get approval. So we are in the process of doing that. In fact, we've already had some engagements and demos with our agencies, and we have some scheduled this week. As soon as we get the equipment, we'll be ready to roll. Additionally, I spoke of the warehousing situation. We are currently working with that, with customs, but I wouldn't want to say much about it at this point in time. But what I can say to the general public, that when that information is presented, it would drastically improve the facilitation of trade and the experience for persons bringing in cargo. The customer service experience would be improved significantly.
Now, of course, you're responsible for the legal borders and the official borders, but one of the problems we have in these small island developing states is that we have very open borders. and very porous borders. And a lot of things really find their way in, not through the legal borders, but through all kinds of other borders. Because remember, we've had incidences where boats would have come in at certain bays and so on with people and all of that sort of illegal activity taking place, which in this environment, the COVID-19 environment, can really create a disaster. If you have people coming in illegally, integrating into the population, and then suppose they're COVID-19 infectious, then they can spread the disease and things like that. And I know that you work closely with customs and the Coast Guard and the police and so on in terms of manning the borders, because border security is extremely important. In terms, what can you tell me, Dr. Fida, in terms of border security and how SCASPA has worked over those 28 years to really improve security at our borders?
So SCASPA has jurisdiction only over parts of St. Kitts. Joseph, you could help me with the geographical locations. I think it goes all the way to...
From Limekiln, go all the way down to, I don't know if I can say that, to about Frigga Bay area,
Shittin Bay?
Shittin Bay,
Shittin Bay. So SCASPA's jurisdiction is limited to that area. We do have a security patrol unit and a vessel, and that unit has been and is responsible for patrolling those areas to assist with the border control, and it's all part of the ISPS, International Ship Ports Security Program that we have in place. So over the years, we have been doing that. In fact, we have a new vessel now, and we're looking to retrain the staff and to launch it again, especially in preparation for the opening of the season. So we have worked closely with Coast Guard, Customs in this regard. So we do have that unit in place. It's just that it's limited, though, within a certain geographical area. It is not extended for all of St. Kitts.
No, I sort of was specifically talking about, for example, at the seaport itself and at the airport. What has SCASPA done? Those ports that they are responsible for. For example, you're responsible for the cargo port, the cruise port, the airport, the ferry terminal. What has been done to improve security at those borders?
We are currently in the process of revamping our security unit. What we plan to do, and you may have seen some ads going out recently requesting persons to apply for the positions within the security ports constabulary units. We have partnered with the police, and we have a 2 to 3 months program specific for officers. So we're going to start with the officers that we're going to employ, some 20 to 30 persons. And we're going to do a rotation in the sense that when the person comes out and go into our system, we're going to have the existing staff go through that training. And that training would be focused primarily on securing our borders. In addition to that, we've recently signed through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Civil Aviation, signed an agreement with IATA. That's the agency that is responsible for regulating at the airport. And they're going to provide some assistance to us in terms of equipment, scanning equipments and equipments to detect certain things, and training. So that is in play at the moment. At the seaport, we are going to embark on some additional ISPS training for our officers. We had meetings recently with the representative for the U.S. Embassy, and we're going to have the U.S. Coast Guard coming in very soon to do an audit of our seaports. So we're putting things in place so that we do not fail that audit. And of course, we're very open to whatever recommendation that the U.S. Coast Guard will provide to us to augment security at the seaport.
Right, because you have to meet certain international standards when it comes to safety and security.
That's correct.
Otherwise,
yes.
the airport is closed down.
Yep, it will be
and the
closed
seaport
down.
is closed down. And so therefore, for example, someone told me once that one of the requirements is that you must have things like a fire truck.
Yes,
has to always be at the airport and things like that.
Yes, yes, we do have
an ambulance as well.
We do have a fire unit at the airport with ambulances there, and it depends also on the size of the aircraft.
Yes.
You can have more than one. We do have police presence there. Customs is also there with should I call them dogs? With those with the canine unit. So we do have things in place. In fact, we've looking at augmenting our security access protocols. We're going to also make this available virtually, and we're going to work with customs and the police in doing the relevant background checks, etc. And those things will be uploaded to the system. So we'll be able to assess persons wanting to access the sterile areas of the airport faster. Because sometimes we have instances where we have to give the access and then pedal back to get the background check. But with this system, those are going to be done ahead of time. So that too is going to address our security.
How often is an inspection done? For example, you said with training, because a lot of times terrorism takes place at airports. This is one of the target areas for terrorism. How often, you have inspection by the international authorities or the regional authorities?
Right. So for the airport, we have various regulatory bodies. Locally, we have the Civil Aviation Department, and they're very aggressive. In fact, they have a presence at the airport almost daily, and they do audits, I would say almost monthly, and report on that. So we have to be on our P's and Q's, things like fencing and security cameras and whatnot. Those are examined. We have IATA, who from time to time would also do audits. Because of the whole pandemic, we haven't had them as frequent because the airport was not operational, but they do come sometimes twice a year, depending on what it is. And they not only audit SCASPO, but they audit the airlines and the other agencies that operate at the airport as well. So it happens quite frequently. They would have discussions with us, debriefing with the deficiencies and so on. We're given a time period to address them. And if we fail to address them, well, we can consider the airport shut. So we have quite a bit of work to do at SCASPO, and we're heavily regulated, and that is why we're looking at our officers, our security officers, and implementing a special training, especially in the screening area, to have security staff members with certain skill set in that area. So we're working on that, and of course our airport operations team as well.
Now, gentle people, we're going to go to the phone lines and to hear what people have to say. Now, the numbers to call are 466-2666, 466-2666. The cell numbers 662-8674, 662-8674, 767-4765, 767-4765, and the overseas number 1-239-645-4500. That is 1-239-645-4500. We await your calls. Right, borders are extremely important, and as you mentioned, because they facilitate, your borders are a gate where you can let people in and you can let people out, and they play a great role in terms of national security. You know, who you let in and who you let out. It can really create a society, people coming in and people going. It facilitates migration and all of that sort of a thing, which is a good thing because you have the free movement of people and people moving and things like that. But as we said, and the cloud over our head is that with the movement of people now is the COVID-19 pandemic. It has really overshadowed everything that we are doing and so on. You know, it's not just now about the borders, but how do you do it safely?
Yes, about doing it safely.
How do you do it safely? So, the 14th, Joseph, you said, is the celebrity equinox that is going to come, and that is going to be our test. that is going to be our test. Now, is there anything that you would want to address that I have not asked you?
Yes. I would like to, at this point, just thank our board, which is supported, well, our chairman, Damian Hobson, and our minister, who supports the board. Some of the initiatives that we're taking right now is our mandates by the board. As you know, we do have a young board who is very much au fait with technology and whatnot. So those mandates would have come down from the board, and we just want to thank them for having the confidence in management to really improve SCASPA and to make the port into a modern port. I want to thank the staff as well. I mean, during the pandemic, the borders were closed to commercial activities at the airport, but the seaport remains open. The airport remains open to private and emergency flights. So while persons were home in quarantine, our staff members were working, and I just want to really, really thank our staff members, our security officers. Say what you want about them. They're responsible for securing our facilities and essentially securing the borders as well. And they have not had a break. They had to work right through the pandemic. Our operations officers who were responsible for getting the cargo to the people, working with the agencies, our operators, our operatives, our tally clocks, and the superiors and the management of the seaport and of the airport cargo shed. I just want to thank them, because while we were home and scared, they were out there working to get things to us. Even the support staff, the maintenance team, the finance team, HR and so, they were working sporadically as well. So I just want to say a big thank you to the SCASPA team. We have our ups and downs, but we do have committed staff members who look out for the well-being of SCASPA and the country as a whole. And I just want to say thank you to them.
What are some of the improvements, Tafida, in your mind that you think can help SCASPA with its operations?
In my mind, that is my opinion.
Yes.
I just want to make it clear out there that is really my opinion. I really think that the port needs to get out of the warehousing business. The port is currently constricted. In between the port, private property. And as cargo increase, we need space to put it, and we cannot expand. Now, we've seen what happens internationally. We don't have cargo facilities at the ports. Those are manned by private entities, most times the agents. And they're in a better position to provide the services to the customers. So cargo comes in, it just goes through the port and goes to the different facilities, and the customers can go to that facility, or the facility can do delivery, like we have Amazon and all those things. So this is something that is going to help not just SCASPA but the people of St. Kitts in improving service. And as I said, that's my opinion. And also, when that is done, it means that it frees up space at SCASPA to focus on facilitating trade and the containerized operation. And we can also have space to consider transshipments, where cargo comes through the port, rests here to go to other ports, because we now have a bigger yard space to accommodate containerized cargo. But, and that's on the airport side. As I said, that's just an opinion, but that can very well improve the operations at the port and facilitate trade within St. Kitts. We always get complaints about our doing business ratio, and I know the chamber is listening, and they will be happy to learn that Casper are doing things in order to improve on the doing business ratio.
Joseph.
Expound on what Tafida said, and I'm going to be biased because I always say that we spend all our focus is on the airport, and at times we forget that my department is the cash cow of Casper.
I don't think this is for public consumption.
Right? But I too am of the same opinion that of what Tafida just expressed. What you would have, I would say, is that we have incorporated an old model in where we deal in the warehousing issue or the break bulk aspect of operations. You would find regionally most of the ports are trying to get out of that model and go or move to a more modernized where they just deal with just containerized cargo. Some with transshipment. You would find Antigua making a little bit of headway, trying to move more specifically or focus on transshipment and get out of break bulk. I know in Jamaica, specifically Kingston Wharves, they too have done away with their some of their warehousing activities, some, not all, because with most of this model, the warehouse is smack in the middle of operations on the pier. So what you would find is that most of those would move their warehouses out of that area so they can have more space, as Tafida say, to operate with containers and what have you. You find it also in St. Martin. The main focus is containerized cargo, and private entities are the ones who deal with the warehousing operation as well. So for me, this is the direction that we need to move into at this moment.
I know that you mentioned, Joseph, that the reason for the implementation of the new system at the cargo port was because of the pandemic. What happens when the pandemic is no longer?
If and when the pandemic is over, personally, I don't think it will be over anytime soon. But if and when, it will continue. I think by then we would have fine-tuned the process, because one thing that and I know Tafida and the board would agree with me is that we need to incorporate technology more. We need to do that there. Even with, for example, inland revenue. Even the inland revenue has the tools for persons to go online, make payments online, and do their business online. You would still, when you pass by, there are long lines, right? But for us at the port, we would like to incorporate technology. Have persons, educate persons, not just our staff, but the general public, so that we want to encourage them to use the tools that we are providing so that they can stay from in the comforts of their home, in a meeting, or at work, or where have you, on the beach having a little pina colada or something, and that they can do their business with us at the port. So for me, as I said, we would like to encourage or incorporate more technology so that we can make it not just more easier, but more efficient for all parties.
So you're finding that the new system has been more efficient?
I would say yes, because although you would hear the complaints here and there, you would find, let's say, 50%, 60% of persons who would come, well, yes, I just come, collect my cargo, and I go, right? Now, one thing that we, as I said, there are hiccups that we can and will address, but if we can get that 50, 60% to about, let's say, in time, to about 75%, 80%, and if you can carry that percentage or continue that trend to go up, it will put us in a better position to serve the general public. So that is why I say that this is a process that will continue. We just need to work out the kinks, and it will be something that will be there for us to do in the near future.
Yeah, and people still saying that, when my stuff is being checked, I want to be there to see. You know, I want to be there to look at my stuff being checked. And I believe that, go ahead.
When you put through your baggage to the airlines to come home and you put all your fancy stuff in it, it gets checked.
No.
It gets checked.
Yes, it does, but it goes through scanners.
But at times they physically open it and they go through and they will
if they see something that is
put a mark indicating that your bag was touched.
That is correct.
I don't hear complaints. It's not that different.
Right. Because they don't open it there, but you put it onto the conveyor belt. And
the scanner.
But you think it's not being checked, but it is being checked.
It is being checked. I'm telling you, we operate an airport.
Scanners.
And at times physically open as well.
That is correct. That is correct.
It's the way the world is going. As you say, we need to trust the system. So.
Frida, we're not even. The world has become very cynical. We have a lot of cynics today, and more I am seeing it, especially with now the vaccines and all of this kind of thing. People are, you know, not even trusting what the experts and the professionals are saying. The scientists. People are now talking. If you listen to some people talk on the street, you would really think that they have been to university to study science. They are actually trying to convince you. They've done no studies on anything. They've done no experiment. They've done nothing. But if you listen to them,
have that challenge at CASPA as well, and that is it has protracted our vaccination process. Our percentage is somewhat in line with the national average, and we're kind of stuck. We're somewhat stuck, especially the fact that we're the first point of contact. It means that we're very much at risk. It's like, what do we do next? We have the Pfizer out, and we have reports that it has been approved. So we're hoping that with the new drive, the new push, we'll have some more persons getting vaccinated.
But you know, the funny thing is that human beings will make excuses. And when we only had the Oxford AstraZeneca, they said, well, oh, we need a choice.
Another one, yes.
They said it was experimental. We now have the Pfizer, which is that you have another choice. You have a choice now. And
it is approved.
And it is approved by fully approved by the FDA. You know, for 16 and up. What now is what now? The new thing now I am hearing is that I want the one with just one dose.
Oh, so we have to get the Johnson & Johnson now.
Yes. Working for you, good afternoon.
Yeah, working for you, that's why. This is John over here.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this is a member of the court for 20 years.
Okay.
And when you see going on at the court, you look like you have Sesame Street game at the court. The court is a feeling place in that line. You just can't put anybody there. I've no friend thing and put to run no port, you know. The port is a serious place. Must could make money to sustain itself. You understand that's why? I don't know if you know much about the port, but the port is a place where it's very serious. Now, I heard that they want to done away with the great bulk cargo. You just can't do that. You just can't do that. Years ago, we get finances from the Canadian government to build that warehouse on the port there to accommodate the great bulk cargo. That's when everybody was dealing the great bulk cargo. But as time goes on and we get more modern, containerized come into it. We must look at ways and means where we could, because right now, all the shipping line is running containerized cargo. It's a good move, but you have to get manager who understand the port. And for me, Louis Hendrickson is the man who should be taking that port to the next level. When I was at the port in 81, Louis was a youngster at the port. And for the years, he grew into it. And you find governments come and just push him in a corner. Louis had no call talking about putting him to deal in the security. Louis should be running the port as the general manager. You understand that's why?
Mm-hmm.
Things going on at the port shouldn't be happening. You find one of it. I wouldn't even talk about it on the ear. I will deal with that on the road. But it is very terrible. And you have a board there where put there by friends. And a porter is supposed to run it like that. We want that port. That's why when I was at the port, we used to do so well that we used to take care of all the primary schools in this country under Hugh Heiligo. One time I home and hear the minister talking about a board make decision at the port. No port board to make that decision. The government make decision and pass it on to the minister. Man, it's too much of anything. That's why I have a good day.
Thank you, Jam Down, for your input. Would you like to respond to anything that he has said? In terms of the structure of SCASPA, what he just mentioned, not without getting into some of the things that we cannot verify that he said, but SCASPA is a statutory corporation and it has a board. Now, what is the function of the board? So it has a minister, it has a board, and it has staff. What is the function? How does it work? So that the public can understand. He just mentioned that no board must make decision and that sort of a thing.
So SCASPA is governed by the SCASPA Act, and the Act clearly outlines the structure. We have the government, and the minister is a representative for the government. We have a board of directors, which is appointed by the minister, and they report to the minister. We have management report to the board, and so on. Now, the government will set policies for the country. The minister is a conduit to pass that on to SCASPA because we're responsible for the port. So whatever policy would impact us would be passed on to the board, and the board would set policies that aligns with the national policies for SCASPA. The management is responsible for taking those policies and converting it into operational protocols and procedures and so on, and running with the mandate. So there are decisions that has to be made by the board.
Oh, so there are decisions that have to be made by the board.
On a strategic level.
Yes, on a strategic level. But those
not on an operational level.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the decisions that the board makes do not have to have the approval of the cabinet. Is that it? I'm trying to.
Well, the minister represents cabinet.
Yes, so the minister will take whatever to cabinet.
Yeah, basically, if there's a need to take it to cabinet, yes.
Okay. So not everything has to go to the cabinet. It doesn't have to.
We operate with a budget which has prior approvals. So if items in the budget has already been approved, there's no need to take it further.
Okay.
Because it was already approved, and that budget is shared with the Ministry of Finance and our minister and so on. So through that process, they're aware as to what is happening.
Because the reason I mentioned that is because, of course, because of the pandemic and things like that. At one point, we were hearing that SCASPA were putting certain things in place, that is only certain persons who were vaccinated and all of that sort of a thing can really come on their compounds and all of that sort of a thing.
Casper was taking decision based on its responsibility to protect staff and the users of its facilities based on what was happening in terms of the safety actions that can be taken. We do understand, however, that the whole COVID-19 pandemic is unprecedented and guidance has to come from a very high level. So when there were interception, we have to go ultimately with what the policy, the higher level policy. So there are instances when that can happen, yes.
Thank you for clarifying. Is there anything else that you would like to say?
Joseph? No, we basically patiently awaiting the calls, but it would appear as though we would have addressed upfront some of the challenging issues that we have. We just want to tell the public to have some level of understanding, to be a little patient. We're working, but we do have cash flow constraints, and we're trying our best to ensure that we have ports that are operating optimally in compliance with international standards. Okay.
Now, when did we get back the arbitration award? I think you mentioned, is it in 2020?
Yes, it was June 25th, 2020.
2020. Okay, it's not 2021. It's 2020.
Sorry, 2021. My apologies.
It's 2021.
This year. Which month we're in? Yes, so it's June 2021.
2021.
Yes.
You said 2020.
June 2021,
okay.
So just a few months ago.
Okay, good. Is there anything else you would like to say, Mr. Wilson, before we go?
No, well, let me say this. I'd like to thank you for having us. What I would say on our end, from the seaport, we, under my leadership, we would try or do our best to keep the public abreast of all changes or all information as it relates to the cargo and cruise. As Tafida said, our website will be out or will be redeveloped website. will be launched on the 30th, and we will be using different social media platforms to get this information out. As Ms. Stewart also mentioned, there are other, I would say, exciting things that we are in the mix of with our other stakeholders, like our platform, the PMS and the PCS, the single window system. So as we go forward with these new endeavors, we plan to keep the general public engaged and informed. First and foremost, we want to be as transparent as possible and to educate persons, because we do not want what happened last Christmas or last season to happen again. So for me, please look out for a lot more information from SCASPA. As our team basically says, we're here and we're trying to overcome all the challenges and the various experiences that we've had in the past. And we are here for you, to serve you, right on working for you.
Right, so.
Our motto has been working harder to serve you better.
Okay.
But with this new environment and the technology and the fact that we're trying to transform the port and make it into a world-class port, it's going to now be working smarter to serve you better.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right. And Tafida, could you just mention again some of the activities that you have planned for this month?
Yes.
Just to refresh the...
So we're here with you. This is one of the activities that we've had. On September 10th, we have our karaoke sing-off that will be held at the Port Zante at the cruise terminal. On the 18th, we have a community uplift project. We'll be planting trees on the Bay Road. On the 25th, we have a hike to Sofa Stone, and we end with the launching of our website on the 30th, and that was going to be virtually. So that's the activities that we have planned.
Okay. Well, I want to thank both of you, Tafida and Joseph, for coming and sharing with the public what SCASPA is doing for the preparation for the full reopening of the borders. I know that it is not easy, that you have been doing a lot of work, more work than usual, because not only is that we have to open the borders, but you have to think in terms of the health and all these protocols and safety measures that have to be put in place to ensure that we reopen our borders, that we do it safely. And as Joseph said, this is a test for us. It's a trial and error for us, and we basically need to get it right. Something else. Mm-hmm.
I think it would be remiss of me, although to feed a thank to our staff, I'd like to thank the seaport operations team. As Tafida says, during the pandemic, especially during lockdowns, while other entities or other organizations was closed, my team have been diligently working behind the scenes to ensure that food is on the table, clothes and other stuff are in stores for when the lockdown, for when resume services and so forth. And the team has been instrumental, from the cargo operations team to the marine division as well. They are basically the first point of contact, especially when it comes to these vessels, boarding these vessels and ensuring that these vessels come safely into our harbors. So I would like to thank them for their service, and as we go forward, I'm sure that they will do their utmost to ensure that even though we are in this pandemic, they'll ensure that the services continue and ensure that trade continues within the Federation.
Right, so thank you, and I want to wish you a happy 28th anniversary under your theme, Overcoming Challenges, Building Resilience, and to wish you every success in the activities that you have planned and going forward with the reopening of the borders. So thank you very much for coming and sharing with us. And Tafida, who is the Chief Executive Officer, she's acting in that role, and I do know that she's also the Chief Financial Officer, the CFO. Yes. So she has additional responsibilities. And Mr. Joseph Wilson, who is our support manager. Thank you very much. I want to thank all of you for listening to our program today, Working for You. Next week we will be back with another Working for You program. Until then, continue to remain safe, and we will be back next week with the Department of Marine Resources. Take good care. I am Les Roy Williams.